imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's live edition of DTRH. Joining me tonight, I have a special live guest. And I didn't want to tell anybody because I wanted to keep it a surprise until like the last few hours so I could hype it just in case anything happened, because sometimes when we don't keep it cloak and dagger, things happen and we have a connection issue. So I wanted to keep it quiet until the last minute, but I have a special guest for you all tonight, a very close friend of mine, very special lady, none other than Judyth Vary Baker herself. Judyth, welcome back to the broadcast.
I'm happy to be back. Thank you.
So we're going to go over a slew of things tonight. We're going to cover the weaponized cancer. I want to get into Lee. I want to cover David Ferrie. But first and foremost, I want to say it was an honor to finally get a chance to meet you and give you a big hug and a kiss in person.
Same here. It was a delight to meet you and your wife and Mrs. Popeye and the dog and so on.
We had a good time. I think the entire event ended up being it ended up turning out real well. And you just recently told me in the past few days, one of the attendees that we both got a chance to meet in person and people got a chance to hear speak for the first time, passed away not too long after going back home from the event.
Yes, that's correct, Jim Norvell.
And he was Billy Celeste's attorney. And in fact, I got a chance to introduce him, and then, he passed away. It's just, I think obviously, getting a chance to meet him, he was sick. I don't think there was any conspiracy there. I think he was just sick, and
sure.
Maybe his body, it was time to go. But I'm glad we got a chance to meat him and talk to him.
Well, I thought it was courageous of him because he obviously wasn't well. He came in a wheelchair. He spoke and all that. It must have taken the last of all he had. He has a book, and I want to read the book and review it, and looking forward to that. So let's hope that Jim is looking down from heaven and will be pleased.
So getting into the other aspects of the 50th, how were you received? I mean, I know, but for the listening audience, you were received a lot differently than even myself. I thought you were going to have a few more issues, and in fact, it was almost like certain things that other researchers that might have been a roadblock in your way. It was almost like there was problems that were squashed. It was, from what I saw, I thought you were received very well, and I think it's about time. But tell the audience what you experienced. Go ahead.
Well, it depends. Let's see. Like, for example, I was surprised at the COPA conference that I didn't get an opportunity to speak, and had expected that I would. But it was interesting that when I walked in, so many people turned and greeted me, and I was really amazed. And then in the end, John Judge brought up, of course, the weaponizing of cancer and some of the work we had been doing. And so I was able to answer some questions and so on. And that was the very last part of the conference. I was grateful to have an opportunity to speak up a little bit here and there. And of course, everywhere, it was interesting that we would have a main speaker in the front. I won't mention the name, but this is a powerful speaker at a press conference. I walked in, and the people who were filming, they stopped and started interviewing me and filming me. And I thought that was kind of embarrassing for the speaker that was at the front there, But it's just been, there were so many interviews. I had to wear 2 watches because one would be coming in from, like, one was Voice of Russia and things like that, coming from other places, and then others were right here right there in Dallas. I suppose the most striking thing that happened, and I thank God for it. I thank God for all of you and all you've done to help this happen. Besides the donations, can you imagine, Popeye? I started out, landed in Atlanta, and my publisher said, look, we're having you speak at Loyola University, and then from there, you'll have to wait a month and then we'll speak at Dallas, Well, that's a long time to stay in the United States when you don't want to be with your family and have them be traced to where they live and things like that. I didn't want that to happen. And it didn't matter, because in the end, Popeye, everywhere I went, like from Atlanta, I went to, I'm leaving out a couple cities. When I went to Loyola and spoke there, this is Loyola University, and unbelievably, it was just raining, and there were no signs on how to get there. You had to walk on plywood, and there was construction and no place to park. And I thought, oh dear, it's going to be awful. I was almost ashamed or scared to go in. I thought, there are going to be 5 people here, Walked in, and it was completely packed to the rafters, and people had, they were ran out of chairs. Every university seat in that auditorium was taken, and it was wonderful to be able to speak to them. Then John Wells and Jim Mars and I, and others of that I respect, we were also speaking at a quite radical group that wants to take up arms and change the country. They're really tired. This is in Dallas. When I was in Dallas, I was surprised at how many people recognized me at the grassy knoll, and they were young people. Oh, we saw you on YouTube, that kind of thing. I suppose that the most shocking is that I wondered how in the world I'd make it from day to day and never had to worry. The donations just came rolling in. And from, like, for example, I went to Baton Rouge and spoke there, and from there then to New Orleans. We had Lee's birthday party, and it was the most incredible thing. We at Katie's restaurant, they set a whole restaurant aside, and that was through David Jordan and his boss there. We had green glasses. They had gotten several dozen green glasses, and these are the antique ones. And it was just, everybody got one who wanted one. We sang happy birthday to Lee for his 74th birthday. And it just brought tears to my eyes that Lee is being accepted and he's being understood and who he really was. So from New Orleans then, and all that happened, I had to go up flew to Indianapolis, only college, and we're talking about Gary Severson and Ed Tatro and Douglas Horn, and others that I respect, appreciate, and admire. We spoke together, and we spoke in tandem. We answered a lot of questions. I think we made some history there. And then from there, it went on to, I can't remember in order exactly, because from there it went to Chicago. There, I was met by some other wonderful people, and I mean, all this was paid for. They paid for the flights. They bought books, everything. So everything got paid for all along the way. And in Chicago, I met with Abraham Bolden, thanks to Phil Singer, and also met Antoinette Giancana, the daughter of Sam Giancana, and saw an awful lot of mafia stuff. And we talked, and I saw her. She had some interesting people in the house there, and some of the shall we say, souvenirs she had of her dad and everything would, I think, be very interesting to some people. Abraham himself, who had been the year before, I couldn't see him because he was in such distress from he had twisted his back and everything. He was up and strong, and he's trying to, that man is incredible. Anyway, we had a wonderful time talking together and everything. He's a brave and good man. Oh, and okay, from there, we went on, I'm carrying on, but this is the way it was. From there, went to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and there was another group there, and again, a lot of speaking going on and everything. Then from there, went to Wichita, and one of the finest broadcasters you can imagine I spoke with there. It went all over Wichita, because he had actually known the person who had been on a plane that was diverted from Dallas, and he's sure that some assassins, a team of assassins, was on that plane. It was shocking to listen to him and all that he elucidated. From there, in Wichita, I went to over to Hollywood and Los Angeles, and there's it could be a movie, but we think we would be better to have a 3-part television production. On top of this, we have the play Me and Lee that's also being produced over in Austin. So all of this is coming to pass. And from there, flew out to Atlanta, and I was supposed to, from there, go on to Amsterdam, where also I met with others, but I couldn't even get out of that place before, by then they had organized something there. And all that was paid for, and I spoke at the Jimmy Carter Center. What's ironic is that Jimmy Carter was actually in town. A lot of it was blocked off for security for him. But Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford were two that denounced the History Channel presentations. You know, the Men Who Killed Kennedy, episodes 7, 8, and 9, and mine was episode 8. And, they were condemned and banned. And, I mean, these two former presidents signed those petitions to get us kicked out and banned from the History Channel. And here I'm speaking at the Jimmy Carter Center. So that was a very ironic turn of things. And anyway, from there I went to have wonderful opportunities have ever since I got back. It's opened up in Europe. It's just been incredible. All of this is just to get Lee and this mission accomplished. I failed to mention that we went out to Arlington. Of course, we had the Arlington conference too, and I did speak. And I was at the Lancer conference at the Selling Books. I've been banned from Lancer because of Deborah Conway. She's the one that took the evidence film of Anna Lewis and wouldn't give it back, and her book and David Lifton's book was destroyed apparently because publishers canceled their book right after I had shown them my evidence and gone around. They weren't going to publish my book, but they didn't publish theirs, and I don't think I've ever been forgiven. But at any rate, what did happen there in Dallas was something extraordinary, because we had more than 50 people give their, we had a eulogy and a ceremony memorial service for John F. Kennedy and one for Lee. And I don't know why they didn't do this in Dallas, but they didn't. They had no memorial service for John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, our slain president, on the day that he was buried. Well, we went out there on the 23rd because we were afraid police would haul everything we were trying to do on the 24th. And Robert Groden and I were there. Robert stood forth and said, "We now know that Lee Oswald tried to save Kennedy's life, and that he was a hero." And I we're right at Lee's grave. And we had Hy McHenry. He's a former Green Beret, a Marine, a chaplain who flew in. He's very popular in New Orleans, native of New Orleans, came in and gave a wonderful eulogy and prayer for Lee Oswald, dedicated that grave because he'd been exhumed and that grave had not been rededicated. Excuse me. So all these flowers, we had heaps of flowers and messages from about 50 people. What a difference. Because when I went out there in 1986 for the very first time and all by myself, Lee's grave was completely blank of any kind of flowers or anything. And people told me they'd put something down and they'd take it away right away. Well, we did this on the 23rd, but we went back on the 24th. And Popeye, all the flowers were still there. It was just like a miracle.
I was surprised myself. Because when we did the ceremony, I remember we were all talking when we left, and you had said to me right before we go, we were like the last five. It was you, Chaplain McHenry, myself, and there were two other people there. And I remember the three of us having a conversation. Yeah, Pierre was there, and we were all talking about how we thought they were going to take the flowers.
Oh, and Homer Henderson too. Yeah.
It was a really Wayne Madsen show. I mean, talk about serendipitous. Wayne Madsen showed up, and they didn't even know that we were having a memorial service. They happened to be in town, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to go somewhere else. There was something else they were supposed to attend, and they didn't want to go. And they said, "Hey, let's go over to Oswald's grave," just randomly. And they pulled up as we were setting up the whole memorial service. So it was very serendipitous that they just, were drawn over there. And
we had all these little messages, which we didn't have time to read them or anything like that, but I just put them down in a little, I had them with me. And I just know that, I don't know, we sang, just a stanza of Lee Harvey was a friend of mine, but he was a friend of our nation. He was a friend of Kennedy and gave his life. And people are starting to recognize this. So we've come a long way, Popeye.
That's like I said when I spoke to the audience at the Arlington conference. I said, we have come a long way. When the one guy said, well, I don't think, we've gotten anywhere. Look where we are. We still have a police state. Yeah, we do. But we would already be 100 miles beyond where we are if we didn't have people standing up and telling the truth. And, just the fact that you had a room with like 60 people in it is a testament to the word is getting out. Because 3 or 4 years ago, it was. Look how much harder it was to get in touch with you and get this word out 3 or 4 years ago when you and I first met and we started putting together videos and doing interviews and stuff.
I was receiving threats and everything. But part of it, Popeye, is just getting to meet people and they get to shake my hand. I look in their eyes. They can see how sincere I am. And they know that I loved him and that this man was a good man. They're learning these things and it's the persistence and good people like you that gave me the opportunity to be able to speak without harassment and mockery and all that, So I just have to pray for these people because they have to stand before God someday. And as you know, I'm a Christian. I became one, you might say, from a point of atheism, and it's meant a great deal to me. I think my life was preserved. I'm the only one left, really, from that whole group. most of whom were murdered. And I cared about them. We were going to, in fact, I've written a book now about David Ferrie, Mafia pilot. We're in the very last stages of looking through it, making sure we have all the stuff, because new witnesses came forward, and as you know, a few new photographs that we really can't talk about, but you saw with your own eyes.
I can tell the listener, and I said this before, I brought it up briefly, but I was actually glad that you brought this up, Judyth. I've seen pictures of, let's just say, Dr. Mary Sherman. I saw the crime scene photos, because that's what it was. It was a crime scene. And
yes.
I saw it was a secondary scene too. The first scene was actually where she was killed on the public health campus, which, by the way, Chaplain McHenry and I don't know if I told you, but the last day that I was in town, because I went to New Orleans after I left Dallas, and Chaplain McHenry and I hooked up while I was in New Orleans.
Oh, good.
And him and I got access. We politicked a little bit with the people, with the guards and the people that own the land, because apparently it's sold to one of the hospitals over there. And we got onto the property and walked around and went into the buildings where they were doing the experiments. And we think we found the building where the particle accelerator was. We think we found the room and everything. We have photos. I just have to go through it all, but I have photos and video.
I hope you will send some of that to me. I'd love to have one. I might even be able to still stick it in the book if you could get it to me in time.
Yeah, I can send it to you on Skype.
Oh, great. That would be great. It's this kind of thing that has delayed that book. It was supposed to be out by now, but all of the various witnesses, and Hyde McHenry himself brought one forward, and it happened to be about the guards that were around that building, the infectious disease laboratory, where we believe that the linear particle accelerator was housed. And as you know, and you might want to describe, it's up to you, what she looked like after being exposed to the devastation of that machine.
If you read the book Dr. Mary's Monkey, and this is for the listeners, you all know that Judyth's book, Me and Lee, there's another book that goes along with it. First, you should, and I've always said this, you need to read Judyth's books first, and then read Me and Lee in that order, because the way they work together and just everything kind of syncs together that way.
You mean Haslam's book first and then Me and Lee, or vice versa?
No, your book first and then and then Dr. Mary's Monkey. Like, Me and Lee, and then I mean Me and Lee, and then Dr. Mary's Monkey. That's the
that's
the order.
What I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, your book first and then Haslam's book second. And the reason I say that to the listeners, because the way the information will click in your head, it'll definitely sink in much better, and it just clicks better if you read them in that order. But in Haslam's book, he talks about Dr. Mary Sherman. We have about 3 minutes before we go to break, but I'll break this down for you all really quick. And you've heard me talk about this before. I've interviewed Ed before. Go read the book, purchase the book, Dr. Mary's Monkey. Also get Judyth's book, Me and Lee. By the way, before I forget, I have a signed limited amount of them left, because I only have about 1.5 boxes left. But Judyth signed, she had a couple boxes of books left in Dallas, and I took them all, and I made her sign them.
You sure did.
And I took them, and I'm selling them for her. And so, look, she's on the line here. I'm not scamming anybody. She asked me to do it for her. So if you guys want a limited
edition. It
edition.
helped pay for that trip. That's how, one way we did it. It's, anyway, you saw the photographs that were obtained. Yeah,
I got sidetracked. So before we go to break, real quick, Dr. Mary Sherman, she was... they say she was, she was a sex crime, and then they killed her, and then stabbed, and then set her on fire. Well, that's not what happened. And when you look at the pictures I saw, I saw her. I saw the body, and one of her arms was completely vaporized, and I mean vaporized, gone, completely just gone. I mean, there was a stub. And then what should have been at least, I would say 2/3 of her arm gone. And then what was left was just a charred mess. And yet her hair was barely burnt. And the muscles on her face were pulled very tight. To me, it looked like she was electrocuted. It reeked, and I've seen dead bodies. I was a firefighter. I was in the military. I've seen dead bodies. I've seen accidents. I've seen people crushed. I've seen people burnt. She didn't look like a burn victim. All the burns were localized. Like I said, her arm was completely vaporized. 2/3 of her arm is gone, and yet her hair was barely singed. Well,
actually, her arm has gone all the way up to the joint of where it joins the shoulder. What you have there is a point. So I'd say
like maybe
80% of her arm's gone.
I would say like 3/4, maybe even more. It was just this little charred stump that was left, and it's literally gone. So the fire's hot enough to burn all of that away, but not hot enough to burn any of the hair? Huh? Really? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Hair is one of the first things that goes. I mean, take a piece of hair, snip it with a pair of scissors, take a Bic lighter, and light it. And just bring the Bic lighter near the hair and watch what happens to your hair. Now, bring the Bic lighter equally as close to your finger. Does your finger melt away like the hair does? No, it doesn't. This is the kind of stuff you need to pay attention to. All right, ladies and gentlemen, break coming up. Stay tuned. More with my good friend Judyth Baker. Get her book over at federaljack.com. Limited edition 50th anniversary signed copy. $30 with shipping, and I throw in a bunch of swag and bumper stickers. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get right back into it. Judyth, we were discussing the 50th, and before we move on into David and Lee and we get further into Dr. Mary's Monkey and Mary Sherman, I want to bring something up before I forget, and this is important because I've brought this up on air, and I've mentioned how this was told to you, but since you're here, I can have you verify it. And it's in her book again, so you go get her book, ladies and gentlemen, federaljack.com. Right now, right on the right side, I have the limited edition versions where she signed them on the 22nd. So it's special 50th anniversary signed limited edition, and it's the same price as you'd get it if you bought it from Trine Day, but it's signed and you get some free swag. I throw in some Federal Jack bumper sticker or flyers, a Truth Frequency Radio bumper sticker, and right now I have a couple DVD copies left of Wake Up Call. And they're in high quality copies, so I slip them in there, so you get a whole bunch of free stuff if you order a copy, and shipping's included. It's only $30. So I'm selling them, and it's not me making money, it's to help Judyth out. So if you want a copy of her book, give them as gifts. A lot of people have been buying them as gifts, so that's pretty awesome. But anyway, in the book, you will see, and I've mentioned this before, how in the final conversation that Judyth and Lee had, he referred to the assassination as the big event. Well, when I was in Dallas, and I got to find someone in Dallas that can get this video for me, or hopefully somebody can find the archive somewhere. But it was either CBS or NBC. I'm not sure which one of the two, but it was the local affiliate. And they were at commercial break, and it was the morning of the 50th, and they come back in from commercial break, and it's a shot of the plaza, the live shot of them getting set up for the 50th, and the dramatic music, and then the letters come in. The lettering will start small in the middle of the screen and then comes up and gets big. And you know what it said? The big event. Judyth, yeah, exact. That was my reaction. My wife was like, I started flipping out, and she's like, "What's the matter?" And I was like, "Do you see that on the TV? I wish I had the camera."
Oh my God. And it's so the control that was there. You had all those people, they couldn't use umbrellas, umbrella could be some kind of weapon, or maybe you could put a message on top that you could see from a helicopter. Couldn't wear anything that, if you were in that special group that had a message. No signs allowed. They plotted in like robots. They reminded me of what Hitler might have assembled, his group of yes men. Now, I know a lot of those people who went in there believed that Lee was innocent and so on, but the way that the whole thing was orchestrated, the control, the people were not allowed in. It had to be by a lottery ticket, and those tickets, they stopped. You couldn't order them after July 31st. Can you imagine? Or was it 21st? Anyway, after July, you couldn't get one. Now, what's going on here? The big event it wasn't a big event. It was a tragic event, and it was a horrible thing. Of course, the operation was called that. We know that Howard Hunt came out with that information, the Watergate maestro. And of course, he said he was just a bench warmer. Well, at his age, he was at that time, but I suppose overseeing what's going on. What really got to me is, of course, in 2003, several years before he spoke out, Lee said, I said, on the History Channel, well, Lee said the big event was going to occur, and on the 22nd. And we had talked about it like that, and I thought everybody knew it was called that. I thought because it was, obviously Dallas still knows and still remembers.
Well, when I saw that morning, I flipped out. She was like, I literally screamed, "Holy crap!" Except that's not what I said. And I said, "Did you see that on the TV?" And she said, "What?" Because obviously she doesn't, she didn't pick up on that. She doesn't know that little tidbit. And I was just like, "Wow, they're just putting it right in your face." I mean, and then I explained to her. I said, "Look, that E. Howard Hunt," and I explained how deathbed confession. I explained the conversation between you and Lee, and then I said, "Do you see what they're telling you? I mean, it's right in your face."
Well, that's just part of it in a way. The other thing that really struck me about Dallas is that at the scene of J.D. Tippett's murder, instead of putting the accused assassin, they came right out. It's in the bronze. I mean, we've got to do something about this, because 1,000 years from now, somebody could unearth this thing and they'll say, aha, Lee Oswald did kill Kennedy after all. Because here it is in bronze. It just says outright that he killed Tippett. And it's outrageous because the way it's described, they don't mention any, of course, the witnesses who disagreed. We have Helen Markham, who fainted on the scene, and then later she claimed she talked to Tippett before he died. He was gurgling, he was saying something. And, he of course, was killed instantly when he received the bullet in the head, to say nothing of the other bullets in his body. No, Helen Markham, when she's there at the lineup, they have to go and prompt her. She says, I don't know who I'm seeing. I could actually probably pick up that testimony up that she's put out there. It's just outrageous, because I'm going to see if I can do that. Hold on here. See if I can get it. Apparently I can't reach it. But anyway, that's what she did. She said, I can't, I don't see him. And then he said, well, you've got to look at number 2. Oh, there he is. Then of course she catches on. I mean, that's their star witness. The other witness they have, they say, oh, they've got witnesses. He didn't recognize anybody until he got shot in the head. Then he changed his mind. So that's what we have. It's so charming, isn't it? So, I mean, this is what we're up against. They set it in stone for us. Now you have to believe it. You have to go up to the 6th floor museum, and you can't actually stand where they're supposed to, where the shots are supposed to have come from. The only person that's supposed to have seen Lee Oswald in the window described him exactly as to height, but he couldn't have known his height because you had to kneel to do the shot. Yet out comes this report, they're looking for somebody a certain height, a certain weight, and it matches Lee Oswald. How in the world did they manage to do that? Well, they knew all about him, because we know that they used for his address, his former address on Elsbeth, and that address was only known by our own U.S. government. So, somebody gave that information to the Dallas police. So we have all these. It's all rigged, and it's still rigged. And most of us aren't going to put up with it much longer. The kids, the young people, they're looking on internet. They're looking at the YouTube stuff. They're seeing for themselves that Lee says, I was just a patsy. I'm just a patsy. That Lee was asking for someone to come forward and represent him legally. And they're not looking at what was on TV. They're not watching TV. So when I stood at the grassy knoll and these teenagers came up and said, hey, we saw you on YouTube, and yeah, we know he's innocent. What are they trying to pull over our eyes now? You know, they're lying to us again. These kids know they're being lied to about a lot of things in the government. So, you know, it's changing right before our eyes. We just have to get the word out. Got to get the books into their hands, because the internet may be compromised pretty soon. Many files are disappearing. Files that I once was able to pull off the internet, like about the Atomic Energy Commission and also experiments that were done on prisoners and things. They're gone now. You can't reach them. They're, you know, it says this page no longer available and so on. We have, and yet over here in Europe, a lot of those pages are still there. I can still access them. They're just blocked in the United States. I mean, this is, I'm seeing it before my eyes. I'm seeing the internet being censored. But the people, the young people, they're getting their information from like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, and there's where we can reach them. And of course, they need the book. They need the solid words of the book that can't be changed and altered. I've seen quotes of mine from my book. I've seen supposedly long paragraphs taken from my book that have been completely altered. One example I saw recently said that when I was supposedly wrote that when I was in college in the first at University of Florida, that I got my D in chemistry lab because I had to work. I couldn't go to the chemistry lab classes. That's ridiculous. They would never, the university would never put me to work in a situation that so I'd miss any of my classes. It's just a complete lie, and they just put that in there. What really happened is that the computer was all messed up. The computer, I was put in late, and you're not supposed to let anybody in February. Oh, they even had the date when I came in wrong. I mean, they just messed everything up. And then, you know, all I can do is say, look, these people changed it, and they're trying to say that I changed my story. It's just not so. The information that they're posting there on the internet, McAdams and all that, they got it from the Dutch thieves who called themselves Shadow It and so on, sent these excerpts. Now, they had told me if I didn't give them screen rights, film rights, that they were going to, they sent this red ticking clock to my friends and said, if you don't tell us where she is, because I escaped from them, I ran away from them. Anyway, they kept all my things. They had my computer and so on. So they just sent out materials and trying to get me to say, hey, stop, you know. Fortunately, the real manuscript, the one that didn't get altered by these people, was in the hands of Harrison Livingston. And Livingston was afraid that this other batch of altered material would influence people, so he hastily published what he had, and I objected because he wouldn't even let me see the final draft or edit that he did. He just wanted to get it out there as quickly as he could. So we had this precursor of me and Lee come out, and it had everything in it. And things that were speculations that I had, but at least the whole story, and you can see I haven't changed anything. So Livingston did us a favor that way. And of course, he's written other books showing that Lee Oswald was innocent and that this was a government conspiracy and so on. So these are kind of things you have to go through sometimes. And the young people are listening and reading and looking, and they don't believe for a minute. I didn't run into a single person at Dealey Plaza. Maybe you did, Popeye, but I didn't run into anybody who thought Lee Oswald did it.
I didn't see a single soul. Not that I didn't really talk to too many people, but the two people that I talked to didn't, you know, they were all, I think maybe one guy when I was up at the top by the grassy knoll, and I blurted out, "No effing way!" It just came out of my mouth because I was because I don't think I was standing up at the grass. I had never seen how angled Dealey Plaza actually is.
It is, yeah.
It's one of the first things I said when I came back is that Dealey Plaza is actually on a downward angle. Kennedy was headed on a downgrade, on a downslope.
Yes.
When he was killed.
Fishbowl.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. He was headed like down into the center of the fishbowl, which is where the triple underpass would have been, and that's where I didn't realize all that. So when I got to actually see it, because when you see pictures and footage, it's always level, of course, because the cameraman holds it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I have pictures from down there; they look level, but it's not. And I was standing up by the grassy knoll, and I pretended like I was holding a rifle, and I even, from where they're, and I was like, no, I don't think this is where the kill shot came from, because that was the thought that came through my head. I think the kill shot came from somewhere over by the triple underpass. Okay, but that the headshot anyway. So I think the knoll shooter was a diversionary shooter, which is something that it's a technique that military sharpshooters and stuff use. But
I would tend to disagree with you, because I believe that the forensic so-called evidence that Sherry has used, for example, is based on the Zapruder film not having been altered, and we only have one frame with the blood going up in the air. Where did it go? I mean, it didn't fall in the next frame. It's not there at all.
Well, it's blatantly obvious too that the film's been altered. That's another thing that was brought up.
That's exactly right. Well, I just say, I get a little concerned when people, they have to argue about who the shooters were and where they were located and everything. What we do know is the back of his head was blown out, and we have evidence of course, entry wound that we have the Parkland doctors, and that's before anything. The body was taken out illegally from Texas, sent into the tender hands of the new administration. So I don't really care about who shot. I care about who got them to shoot, who covered it up, who made sure that Kennedy would die by not protecting him adequately, and by, of course, it's the irony to me is that, did you know what Kennedy was? Kennedy had a brand new missile, a small little Bible. It was a missile, actually, more than a Bible. It had some biblical quotes and all that. It's a mass missile. Lyndon Johnson took it, and that's what he was sworn in on. It wasn't on a Bible. It was on John F. Kennedy's own brand new unopened missile. And guess who took the missile and kept it? Lady Bird. It was recently donated to the, anyway, it ended up being donated to LBJ Library. I mean, he even took Kennedy's Bible and kept it.
Ugh. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I didn't either. I mean, I just found that out from some reliable sources, and,
If that's true, then it just goes to show you. They take souvenirs.
In LBJ Library, it's not in the Kennedy collection.
Well, it goes to show that, these psychos, they take souvenirs, right, of what they've done. So,
But it's one souvenir after another in this case. I mean, when Jackie Kennedy, arrived in Washington, went to the offices, the rocking chair was already in the hallway. They were already ripping everything out of the Oval Office. And she couldn't even, she had, it was all gone just that fast.
Have you ever heard the audio tapes when he would contact her in the months after?
Yeah, honey, yeah.
Ugh, yeah, ugh. Oh, honey, you need anything, you come over here and you sit with me. You need to cry, you need to talk, you call me up anytime you want. And she's like, I don't want to bother you, Mr. President. He's like, no, honey, for you, you come over. Ugh.
I had to live in the same state with this man. We moved to Austin, Texas in 1965, and he was in full flaming power by then, and people were dying left and right, in the case. And I felt so helpless, and I was frightened, of course, as well. But I'll never forget that I was also in this. When I got pregnant in 1968, late 67, I was in Mexico. I didn't even know about the Garrison investigation, and then I almost lost the baby, so I was in bed, and with my cheapskate husband, we had no TV or anything, and he read the newspapers at the university, so we didn't have that either. I had no idea, no concept about the Garrison investigation until the trial. By then it was way too late. I was scared when I saw Clay Shaw, in the papers. That's too much power. I knew there was nothing I could do. And I kept my nose out of it and everything, and just hoped I'd survive until someday. Well, actually, I wrote everything down and wrote and everything I could remember, and I memorized everything Lee had ever said. And then I thought, I'm just going to die and just going to hand this to my son, and after I'm dead, he can put it out there. But when I talk to my kids, they're so ignorant about everything. They knew so little. And I realized that they would not understand what the evidence meant, what the importance of certain things that Lee said and did. It would take them years, to get up to speed, and they weren't going to do that. And then after watching the film JFK, where it says you're, coward if you don't speak up, well, I knew it would destroy everything, and it did, Popeye. I lost my career teaching at the university. I lost my life savings because of having to go to the hospital so many times. Finally, and I lost most of my eyesight that was useful, and things like that. But, I've just felt stronger and stronger. I feel supported by everybody. I feel supported by God. I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd stayed quiet any longer.
Well, I know I appreciate you coming out, and I know a lot of other people do as well. And you can see, like you said, the 50th. There was a large contingent of young folk there, like a lot younger than you would think. Like people look. I'm in my late 30s, and there were a lot of people who were saying, well, you're a young guy, Popeye. But I'm like, young? I'm young? Like, did you see half the crowd that's here? There's like 19-year-old kids here. This is awesome.
It was, and they are involved, and they're reading the book. They like that. They understand. We were young back then. I mean, I'm writing about, I was 19. Lee was 23 when we met. And they understand how we felt. They can see that what was pulling on us and tugging on us. And Popeye, it's just, I wish he could have been here to see how far we've gone, because most of the, even though we had all those TV specials, 38 of 39 of them said that Lee Oswald killed Kennedy. The only ones that didn't say it was the only one that said nothing, didn't show any assassin at all, was on the Travel Channel. And unfortunately, they also had another episode where they had Gary Mack on saying, oh, yeah, he shot Kennedy. Gary Mack, of course, also wanted, his real name is Larry Dunkel. I'd like to dunk him. He also wanted the name of Larry Dinkle. So just using these fake names. Hey, I put my name out there. I put my face out there. And, you come on. Just try and tell me that Lee Oswald killed Kennedy. I will tell you the truth. And I'll tell you who Lee Oswald was. And I hope people will call in and ask questions, because sometimes there are these nagging little things that loose ends. They need to know that a lot of this is just disinformation or ignorance because of the bad, the lies that were put out there to make Lee look so bad.
Well, we have about 3 minutes, and then we're going to go to the top of the hour break. When we come back in the second hour, we can get into David Ferrie. And again, your perspective on Dave is like no others that we can talk to, because you're one of the only people that's left alive that remembers David Ferrie. and even knew anything about him or got a chance to actually know him as a person. I mean, you actually got a chance to know him, and a lot of times when you research the JFK assassination, he's made out to be a monster, and I'm not saying he was the most perfect individual in the world. He certainly was not. Flawed, yes, he was, but to a certain extent, and I've said this before, we kind of owe him a little bit of something, because if it weren't for him covering up your tracks, you would have been dead.
He did more than that too, and I would love to talk about Dave. There are two other people. I think Mel Coffey is still alive. He's never wanted to get interviewed, and Elvin Boboff certainly is still alive. The last I knew, and recently Elle came out, and I have the documents for it, because it was always claimed, well, nobody had any mice in David's apartment in 63. That all happened when he was living at Vinette Street, 209 Vinette. That's just, when he had at least 2,000 mice, and we have a witness that's come forth and described other animals he had there as well, and how frightened she was. Her parents were so concerned that she not even walked past where David Ferrie lived. They were so frightened of him. So there are things like that going on. But Boboff said that he had seen mice in David's apartment, and Boboff didn't even know David when David had all the mice in the net. So we have that just came out on November 15th, 2013, in an interview in New Orleans with Al.
I'm going to pause this right there, because the break's going to come up in about 45 seconds. But when you get back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get deeper into David Ferrie. And like Judyth said, she's got a book coming out soon on David Ferrie. And flawed although he was, I still think we owe him something, because without him, Judyth, at the very least, Judyth would have been dead a very long time ago. Her children, none of her children would have ever been born. And none of you would ever know the truth about what was going on. You wouldn't know about, you wouldn't have the evidence that she brings forth to back up people saying, hey, the SV40 virus and the polio vaccine. Oh my God. Well, look, here's somebody that can verify it. I mean, talk about verifying it. Anyway, I digress. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 short minutes. Do not go anywhere. Go to federaljack.com. Pick up a copy of Me and Lee right now. I promise you will not be disappointed. Stay tuned. 3 short minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from federaljack.com. Tonight, I am joined by my good friend, author, JFK researcher, because she's also a researcher, but I also want to say piece of JFK history, and all-around just awesome, cool human being, Judyth Vary Baker. Judyth, welcome back for hour number 2, dear.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
You know, when I speak highly of you, and I know researchers, I guess you're supposed to stay impartial, but I've gotten to know you over the course of time, and I actually got a chance to, once I've gotten a chance to hang out with you and actually meet you in person, anybody that's ever hung out with you, and over the years we've created a friendship. When I speak fondly of you, it's not radio shtick. I actually do. Judyth knows this. I actually, she's, I've grown quite fond of her. There's no other way to. Once you work with her, anybody that's ever dealt with her, everybody has the same experience. You just, we kind of keep an eye on you, check in on you once in a while, make sure you're okay. There's a few of us that do. So, well, you're actually really a genuinely good human being, and I mean, when I first researched you, I was like, well, before I even contacted you, I looked into you to make sure that you were real, and I tried to do. I saw a lot of the garbage about you, but I asked a few people about you. And then I got in contact with you, and I said, look, the only way for me to, I've done as much research as I can without having her book. And then I spoke to you, and then I got your book, and then between speaking to you, and actually I was glad that I spoke to you before I read your book. You know why? Because if I had read your book, people could say that perhaps I was tainted, and when I went and that I read your book first, and maybe I was like a fan of you or whatever, but that's not how it was. I had researched you as much as I could, but I had never actually read your book. And when I got it, I spoke to you first, and then I read your book, and your story didn't change. There wasn't like I tried to go through that book and see if there was anything in the book that I could point out and be like, no, look, she lied about this, and I was like, okay, no. And then the more I researched it, and the more it started to connect those little dots here and there, ping, 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 ping. You know what I mean? Little connections here and there. Anything from like Anna Lewis to the big event, just little bing, 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 little puzzle pieces all over the place. You're like the glue that puts a lot of this stuff together. And I started to see other researchers that I respect realizing, and once they started researching your work, like Vince Palomeri, he said, at first I was like, oh please, this woman's making it up, and he said the more he researched you, and the more he researched your book and everything, and then he read Ed Housen's book, he was like, wow, she's the real deal. And I mean, I wouldn't have gone out on a limb, and I wouldn't put my name out there if I thought you were fake. If I thought you were just selling a book in some nut bag, you are 100% genuine. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway.
Well, that's sweet of you, and I just hope that people, when they read the book, the one thing I hope they do is not to skip around, because the book is built from premise to premise to premise. It's a foundation is laid, and then everything. One person was asking me questions. I said, "Well, wait a minute, haven't you read the book?" Well, he said, "I've skipped around," and I said, "You can't do that, because everything is linked." It was constructed that way so you could understand what happened and how it happened, and it builds and grows, and you'll realize the tension and that we suffered under. We really did suffer, that summer, and because of everything, all the forces. They're just dark forces, and they surround you, and they fill the day, and they weigh upon you. That you're trying to kill people, and these people don't care about you either.
Jack Ruby said they injected me, with cancer. They're going to, and then 28 days after he was diagnosed, he died. And I believe that was the exact gestation time for the cancer that you have.
That's exactly right. Yeah. At least one other client, we called them clients, prisoner. So anyway, we're about David Ferrie, being a very controversial person, and unfortunately he has been misrepresented a lot. First of all, his good friends and buddies are not about to tell the FBI, oh, this is a horrible man. No, you'll hear that he's a patriot and everything. Well, he was. David Ferrie is the most fascinating person, and since I knew him personally, it was easy for me it's especially easy sorting out the truth and what is not true about David, just as it was about Lee. There are certain things that David did and how he acted and what he believed and thought. And a lot of things that Jack Martin, an enemy of his, said, for example, were untrue. But I know why he said them, and some of the fights and arguments that those two had together. And as a witness, what's I think interesting is it's going to be. It was easy for me to pick out when people, also researchers, were lying about David Ferrie, trying to twist what was there so it would fit. Basically, they're trying to say, "Oh no, he wasn't involved with any of the assassination. He never knew Lee Oswald in 1963." I mean, we have so many witnesses coming out of the woodwork that, of course, that they knew each other, and not just my statements. But as I went through all the information that was published, Popeye, what I really noticed is that only one man was really giving this information out. Most of it was a compilation of what had already been put out there by the House Select Committee on Assassinations, HSCA, and so on. But we had a couple. We have one person who's a David Ferrie expert. Unfortunately, he's supposed to be neutral, but at least some newspaper articles came out, and he told them that he believed Lee Oswald killed Kennedy. Well, that's a heck of a neutral position to take. What I did notice is that we have, well, others too. We have A.J. Weberman, who's done some really good work on interviewing people who knew David and could report on him. But we're talking about people who hated him or who loved him, and you couldn't be neutral about David Ferrie unless you just didn't know very much about him at all. But what I recognized in him, and which the HSCA said that David Ferrie did not have an extensive education. And so I've made a list. I knew better, but I've made a long list. The book will tell you not only everything about David, but it'll also tell you what his beliefs are and how he became who he was, how it happened. One of the things that he had told me that I didn't realize had not been ever published or known about was that he had been sexually abused by priests. And how he got over it once, and how a priest helped him and taught him the organ and helped him to trust priests again, and then he decides to go and enter a seminary, and he's sexually abused again in a seminary. And he has 2 nervous breakdowns over just that. But even the term nervous breakdown is a misnomer, and it's used way too much with David Ferrie. It's the Ferrie expert I'm talking about, I think, says he's had a nervous breakdown 4 or 5 times. And the whole idea of a nervous breakdown is that you are so depressed and you're so unable to function, and maybe you're having some other mental problems too, but that you simply can't go on with your lifestyle. Well, that's not David Ferrie for the most part, except for those 2 incidents. I don't see any evidence. I see a frenetic life. I see a man who suffers and who struggles with his inner demons. A man who wanted to do the right thing so much and did the wrong thing over and over again. You know, he gave scholarships to young boys to go into seminaries or to go into college, paid their college education, never told anybody. He would pick up a tramp who couldn't get home and maybe in New Orleans, and fly him all the way to Dallas for free. He did some really nice things for people. And yet there's this other side of him where he is seducing 15-year-old young cadets. And he can't help himself, he says. Well, I beg to differ. You'd think at least he did have older associates that one of them is Mr. Eisentraut. Have you ever heard that name before?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's Mr. Bingle. He's the puppeteer. And his puppets first started out, Lee told me, Dave told me that he first met him on Bourbon Street, where this puppeteer who did this cute little Mr. Bingle that everybody liked so much, he was doing naked little ladies. They were puppets, they were pretty rowdy, his puppets used to be. But he invented Mr. Bingle, and that became a success. But originally his puppets were doing very naughty things on Bourbon Street. And David made friends with him, and he's one of the adult homosexuals. Another one was Clay Shaw. So David didn't always just concentrate his amorous efforts, on the young males that were underage. However, I can't absolve him for what he did. I don't care how sorry he was. David had an obsession, and he was stuck with it. He also had some extraordinary education. I mean, the man could speak French, German, Italian, of course, Latin and Greek. He knew two, not just one kind of Latin. He knew Old Latin as well as Modern Latin that they used in the church services and everything, and Mass and so on. And of course, he knew English. And we're talking about Spanish. He was so fluent in it that he just had a tremendous ear for it. He could play classical piano. He even gave concerts on the organ when he was in college. That's how good he was. So when we look at a photograph on the day that he was found dead, and we see a typewriter sitting on the piano stool, hey, Dave never I never saw him put anything on that piano stool but his rear end, because he would sit down there and play. So what is this typewriter doing on the piano stool? And it's not near any chair or anything like that. Well, I have theories, and they're only theories and speculations, but I've looked at the autopsy material. I've looked at all the indications that we have there that there was foul play, and I have to concur that I have listed everything. We've put it in order, and David Ferrie was murdered. And you'll see it in the book. Now, I've placed David Ferrie's whole life in a timeline, and it's done that way so if we ever get any new information, we can put it in. But his life is so complex, but it's kind of like a mystery. As you read, you'll find one person saying this about David and another person saying the opposite. And it could be within just one or two lines of each other, and they're saying the opposite things. So much. You can see finally who is lying and who's telling the truth as time goes on. So it's like you can go along with me in this mystery and find out who David Ferrie really was, who's telling the truth, who really knew him. And in the end, I believe that you will understand this complex man a lot better. You'll know that he was murdered to shut him up. You'll know he saved my life. You'll know how he pretended to hate John F. Kennedy, but actually had changed his mind. You remember, they were both Irish Catholics. He was born in Cleveland of an Irish family, as of course Kennedy was too. He voted for Kennedy. We have the records on that. Anyway, there's a great deal about David Ferrie. Fascinating man, a man who was involved in the Get Castro projects, a man who was involved with the MK, mind control ultra
MK
program.
Ultra.
That's right. He was involved with that. I saw the documents when I was being interrogated by a team at 60 Minutes, and that team was Howard Livengood, and Livengood is he was with the Watergate investigating committee. One of the he saw those kind of documents. They brought them out. They brought those documents out. He was able to see them. When he asked me to describe them, I described how they were put together, how they were signed off, some of the things that were in it. It wasn't the handbook. David didn't have everything, but he had all the things he had to do with New Orleans and the peculiar drug situation there that had to do with voodoo, with zombies. Think about it. You had all these drugs then that had been brought in, and they were supposed to have these different kinds of effects on the mental capacities of anybody imbibing them, and maybe even turning them into zombies. Yes, the CIA was definitely interested in that, and David Ferrie had the connections. You'll see it all in the book. So I just wanted to bring that up and give you a little bit of insight on the book and the exciting life that he led, and how I got to meet him and what that meant.
I do have a really long interview that I did with you about it, and I've been working on the video, but when the 50th came up between that and then I just had surgery, so I got sidetracked for about 3 months, but I want to get it finished. And I've been so nitpicky about it because I'm putting photos that you sent me, well, the pictures you sent me into and stuff. But it for the listeners, I'll release that soon. When I finally get it out there, I'll let you guys know. And it's long. Judyth goes into detail. She breaks down everything. There's going to be graphics and everything that go along with it. So I'll let you guys know when it comes out. But where can they get the book? Over at Shrine Day?
Well, no, not yet. You can right now. It's you can pre-order it from Amazon, and that really helps the publisher and of course you can pre-order from Shrine Day too. But at any rate, all the pre-orders help because it helps finance that he can print more books. He's not He is not Doubleday, he's not Crown or something. So or Penguin books. And books, it's harder and harder to get them printed, but they're so important because the internet can die on us at any time. It can get censored. And like I said, my book, I had essential portions of my book actually altered right on the internet, and I could do nothing about it. So even if you get an ebook, if that system ever breaks down, you're not going to have that anymore. We need to have books in our hands. I mean, the book has come out, Me and Lee has come out as an ebook, of course, on Kindle. And by the way, it's being turned right now into an audiobook. So that'll be out in a few months. So people can listen to it while they're driving. I hope they don't get in an accident.
Good point. It might shock them so much. They might be like, what? And again, get a copy of Dr. Mary's Monkey too, to go along with her book. Get me and Lee, and then get them both at the same time if you want. Order them both on the same day, but read them in the order of Me and Lee, and then Dr. Mary's Monkey. And again, because Judyth's book shows you her background, what she was going, her relationship with Lee, and how that connects to the Kennedy assassination, and David Ferrie, and Clay Shaw, and all that, and New Orleans. And Dr. Mary's Monkey shows you more in depth of what Judyth was connected to. More where people that are mentioned in her book, there's further details about those individuals because they're just as much of a key player in a lot of this. And David was connected. He knew Dr. Mary Sherman too. He worked on the weaponized cancer. In fact, Stone brought it up in the movie. They very briefly, but they brought up the whole mice in the cages thing in the apartment, which I actually with Chaplain McHenry. Him and I, I got to get him on the show. I got to call him. I was talking to him on the email the other day. Anyway, him and I, we did the whole Dr. Mary's Monkey tour, he calls it, and we went all over the place. And we went to David Ferrie's old apartment, and you could see where the entrances were and everything else, and where the mouse house.
We never used the front. We always went through the back.
Yep.
Now that used to have, they have it up again, but it had chain link fence that was gone for years, but it was there way back in the 60s, and now it's back. Last time did you see the chain link fence anyway?
Yep.
I think it does in the front now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't have chain link in the front yard before. Anyway, they had it on the side yards and everything. What I think is interesting is that a little further down the street, if you went to the mouse house, if you went behind, I don't know whether you actually went down the drive and went behind, but in 2003, when Nigel Turner and I were there, when we were there, there was an incinerator that was still there in the back. And of course, they had to take those dead mice away, the ones that had the tumors removed. They had to incinerate them. Over at Dr. Vary Sherman's, that was not possible. And it looks like Lee and an individual whose name, let's see, what was it? Juan Valdez, of all names. Juan Valdez and Lee were apparently flushing stuff down the toilet for over and over and over again. Well, it sounds to me like they're flushing the mice down the toilet over there. Because she had to keep some backup mice. We always had a fear of contamination and all that. Juan Valdez, by the way, is a round-faced Latino who loved to grow orchids and who was the first one to report he saw smoke coming from Mary's apartment, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning. He sees smoke. You know what he does? He doesn't call the fire department. He calls the police. By the way, he's an employee of the trademark.
Yeah. I saw Mary Sherman's apartment too. Yeah. They killed her. They killed her at the property. with this is what I know. Ed Haslam postulates they killed her with the particle accelerator, which I have to agree with him. They killed her with the particle accelerator because there's nothing else that could have caused that that much current to literally vaporize her entire. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't see the picture, but I can tell you, I can see Mary Sherman's face now in my head from the picture I saw. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever forget it. You can't forget it once you've seen it.
No, she was electrocuted. I know in fires muscles constrict because I was a firefighter. I've pulled dead people out of buildings before, but trust me when I tell you that this woman was electrocuted, and I mean her one whole arm was vaporized, and Ed Haslam postulates that they rigged it up so that it would cause the accident. It would cause.
And of course, yes,
the electrocution or whatever.
This very same day that the Warren Commission came to New Orleans to get testimonies, and you know who stepped up to give the first testimony? Dean Andrews. He's sure going to tell them the truth. The emissary of Carlos Marcello. But it's interesting that what he did say, and a lot of people don't know, he comes out and says right away, he says, look, I worked with ordinances, I worked with guns and weapons and things. I used to do that stuff. And he says, Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy. And he continued his whole life to say so. Yeah, he, of course, knew Lee. And I even met Dean myself with Lee briefly, very briefly. And Dean also, he knew who Lee really was. He's the one, when I came with those trimmed flyers, and Lee had asked me to keep some back because he knew the rest would probably be destroyed when he was there on Canal Street. I come with these trimmed flyers, I trimmed some of them, and gave them to Dean Andrews. He put them right in his briefcase. And it's stacked about 5 inches high. I mean, it's a bunch of them. So, I mean, he stuffed them in his suitcase or briefcase. And here we have Carlos Quiroga. He shows up at Lee's apartment there at Magazine Street at 4905. And Mrs. Garner saw him, and the Warren Commission tried to say, oh, he just had a couple of them, right? Just a couple of those flyers. No, she said it was a stack of them. Well, of course, Dean Andrews is not going to show up at Lee Oswald's apartment, but so he sends Carlos Quiroga over there with the ploy that, he's just delivering these over to Lee just so he can talk to him and all that. No, Lee had to get him back. How is he going to get him back? Well, that's how it happened. That's how he got him back.
I'm going to pause this right there, Judyth, because the break is sneaking up on us. And by the way, I suggest anybody who is not familiar with this, not only do I suggest you get the books, but go get the director's cut of Stone's film JFK, just so you can kind of have a visual. It'll even though it is fiction, it's fiction. Well, it's not really fiction. It's a movie based off of fact, but I digress. It'll give you a bit of a visual. Yes, it's a little bit dramatized, but it'll give you a visual. And if you see the character that John Candy plays, that's Dean Andrews. Anyway, we're going to break. Stay tuned. Final segment coming up with Judyth. Again, get her book, Me and Lee. We'll be right back.
We can talk about cancer.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment. I want to get into cancer. Judyth is somewhat an expert on the subject, and again, you have to read her book. And there's not enough time. Obviously, Judyth's been on multiple times before. We've covered it. There's not enough time to get into it in detail in one segment like I should. So I'll start the segment with this. Go back in my archives and look up the shows I've done with Judyth in the past. There's 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Okay, there's about 20 hours at least worth of interviews. Go back and listen to them. I know I did one. I think it was December of 2012, if I remember correctly. Yes, December of 2012. Weaponized cancer was one of and we go into detail for over 2 hours about it. Go listen to that one. Go listen to all of the other interviews so you can have, get the full background. Read her book, read Dr. Mary's Monkey. But with that being said, Judyth, Cancer?
Well, I just wanted to say that I appreciate so much the opportunities. When we first talked, I thought I would never probably be able to talk to you again. But security people have helped me so much to have, access to their computers, to have safe passage from city to city, things like that. And so I'm able to speak, and I didn't know I would. So I know, like one of you said, here's the last one before 2013, and here I was able to put together some safe houses and all kinds of things. So it's been really great to be able to stay in contact.
Oh, I know. I remember that one of the interviews we did, you thought it was going to be the last one that you were going to do for a while. Yeah, and then you said, "Oh, I won't be able to do anything until the 50th." And then in between that and the 50th, the interviews that you and I did, they went viral. Other researchers heard them. They reached out to you, and you were able to. Suddenly, you were in the spotlight. And people were paying attention to you, and it wasn't to insult you; it was serious. And again, this is like I said to that one guy that had said, "Well, at the conference, I don't think that we've made really much any headway in 50 years." And I said, "Well, I beg to differ. I mean, look at Judyth. 5 years ago, it was very cloak and daggerish to even talk to her, and now she's here in front of you all, literally 5 feet from you." Talking to you.
It's just like a miracle, and I didn't get hurt either. Now in 2012 when I came, I paid a professional bodyguard, to be with me. But there's so much. I mean, who's going to do anything to hurt anybody on the 50th? I mean, that would really get attention. They don't want me to have any attention, so it was really safe. And I'm still skating on that ice on that. I'm really glad. So there are things I wanted to share with all of you if we could take a little time.
Yeah, I know you wanted to get into cancer and health and all that.
Yeah, you did. You asked me about where I got my mice that originally.
Yeah, tell the audience where you got your first batch of mice from.
Well, Fred Langford of the Palmetto Bank in Palmetto, Florida, Palmetto National Bank. By the way, he was later indicted for corruption. But anyway, Mr. Langford was in contact with the Rockefeller Foundation and found out that the Rockefeller Foundation supplied hundreds of thousands of mice for different experiments. And the Rockefeller Foundation sent me my mice, my first batch of mice. So they have their fingers in a lot of pies.
Convenient. Did you see the news? I think it was the World Health Organization came out yesterday and said there's the cancer wave is spreading across the world, an epidemic of cancer spreading across the world.
Well, yeah, they had the national maybe you didn't know it, but they had the World Cancer Day was on the 4th of February, which was ignored almost in the United States. They don't want people to think about how they're not really doing that well, and they're trying to say how, we have so many more that are now surviving. Well, we also have so many more that have cancer. So when you have a proportion of people, how long they survive, but they don't tell you the quality of life for the survival rate. In our country, if you're alive, you could be gasping with your last breath. But if you're still alive, you're counted as a survivor, even though you die the next day after the survey. That's not the way it should be. It should be that you're alive and you're not suffering. But anyway, the survival rate. I would like to share with some of you some concerns I have about prostate cancer because, first of all, it's not a disease that used to be as common as it is now. I call it the hard chair disease. If men would stop sitting on such hard surfaces and get more blood circulation into that area, I think that might help a lot. We know that primitive people that just sat on their heels, we don't see so much of that prostatitis. But a dear friend of mine, her husband he had a problem with his prostate. Now, guess what they did, Popeye? They did 10 biopsies on that poor man's. You know how big a prostate is? You know how many chunks can you take out of a prostate? I mean, they did 10 biopsies on the poor man. Of course, they had a lot of blood coming out and all that. Now, I don't like biopsies. If you have something on your arm or a spot on your breast, and they say, let's do a biopsy, I'm telling you this, there is always a chance that cells can loosen up and go into your system. The body tries to protect you if there's a cancerous area by like putting fat cells around the cancer. Well, if you're poking into that and you're pulling stuff out, cells of the body are extremely small, and you're not going to be able to see what you're doing. And they don't do lavage. That is, they don't wash away. At one time, we used to have a lot of washing of wounds, and they don't do that anymore. They don't clean out these areas and flush them out. At any rate, you have loose, you're going to have some blood cells and who knows what other cells are loosened up when you're making a biopsy. I say, if you have something, a lump on your arm or any lump that is you can feel it and it's nice and hard, just get it out. Anyway, after a lot of suffering with this biopsy, and yes, 2 of the samples came back showing cancer, and at a rather advanced stage. And this poor man he had to decide whether to treat his prostate or to have it removed. And I did urge him, please get it removed. He's going to do so. But there are some problems. They're using robotic methods now to remove the prostate. That way they only have to make like 4 small slits to pull the prostate out in pieces. Again, if it's cancerous, I think this is not the way to do it. I'd rather see a laparoscopy. I'd rather see a method where they just open up the area wider in one cut, get it out in one piece. They probably can get it out in one piece using the robot, but we don't know how many little bits and pieces are left over. Also, the other problem is that the prostate is very close to the nerves that allow a man to have erections and to eject fluid, of course. And the other thing is that you can get urethritis. All I'm trying to say is that some men end up having to wear diapers. Not very many, but it happens. And until they are better with a robot, I wouldn't do it. I would find a good surgeon that would open it up wider, get a good look at everything, see where the nerves are. If you've ever dissected, Popeye, have you ever been in a class where you had to dissect out a nerve from the surrounding flesh?
I haven't had to dissect nerves from flesh, but I know what nerve. I've had 10 operations and I've had a lot of nerve damage. So yeah, I've actually seen what nerves and stuff. I've seen pictures and I've even seen images of my own stuff. So yeah,
you know it's so easy to damage these nerves, and once they're cut or something, I mean, you're going to be numb, possibly forever. Well, in that area, it's not fun if you can't have an erection anymore. And I'm just saying that people ought to just say, it may sound fancy and all that. Find yourself a good surgeon, but also get recommendations. They ought to be able to, I mean, gee, we get recommendations on car. Hey, let's try this. What are the tests on this car? This car can go so many, miles per gallon and so on, but we're not going to go and find out if this surgeon messes up patient after patient and cutting their nerves. So to me, this is a concern. We need to know more about the physician should be able to have some recommendations. They ought to be able to have some people to say, testimonial, yeah, I'm fine. Didn't hurt my nerves. Now, there are some very important anti-cancer materials and supplements and so on. I'd like to hope everybody get a pencil and paper out and write these down, because I am very tired of advising person after person again and again and again to please change your diet. It's what we are offered to eat these days is just, well, it's ridiculous. In America, you don't have much of a chance of avoiding cancer because you have fluoride in the water, you have GMOs, and if you could see how hamsters and mice will be, if they're fed GMOs and they're exposed to Roundup or some other pesticide, and half of you are probably spraying for roaches, who knows. These mice and rats and hamsters get enormous tumors by eating GMO corn and being exposed to pesticides like Roundup at the same time. Here are some, so you need to find as much as you can, as many organic sources as you can. Go and get toothpaste, please. It doesn't have fluoride in it. I could go into a long discourse on what's wrong with fluoride, but we don't have time. I'd rather go into this. Now, if you have your pencil and paper, here's a list of what you should take to help you fight cancer if you've got it. It'll help you keep your immune system in better shape if you don't have cancer or you don't know you have it. So we'll start with inositol, inositol. It's a derivative of niacin, a B vitamin, and it's absolutely essential, in my belief, to helping regulate cells so that how fast they might multiply. You'll find that apoptosis occurs, that is, it seems to kill cancer cells. So that's the first one. Inositol, I'd say take 250, 350 milligrams a day. Take all of these supplements with your meals. Don't take them by themselves. Your body gears up to absorb these materials, and they shouldn't be between meals. Everybody should take aspirin, unless you're in a situation where you're taking blood thinners and so on. But even so, if your doctor will let you have a blood thinner called aspirin instead of the expensive material that you may be taking, try and go for that if you can, because of the anti-cancer prognosis that you will have, I think, if you're taking 2 350 milligram doses a day if you're a big person, or 1 350 milligram dose if you're an average sized person. Then there's alpha-lipoic acid, ALPHA, lipoic, LIPOIC acid. Alpha-lipoic acid, again, essential, I think, in helping, especially if you're having problems with your liver and so on. I'd say don't take it every day. You should take it like 3 days on, 2 days off, so that your body doesn't get used to it, and it'll keep assimilating it correctly. Then there's coenzyme Q10. This is what I think of as the youthful enzyme, because as your body gets older, you stop making it. Now, I don't know how many dogs I've seen with cataracts and well, especially with their teeth falling out, and their joints are hurting, and their hips are hurting, and they're not being given vitamin C. You can put it in their water, do it little at a time to get them used to it. But they should be having vitamin C in their water, because dogs, as they get older, stop making their own vitamin C. We don't make our own vitamin C, and dogs slowly lose the ability. Well, the same thing goes for coenzyme Q10. Young people have plenty of it, and then it just goes down. By the time you're 30, you don't have very much. By the time you're in your 70s, well, try and find it in your system. So we really don't know exactly everything about how it works, but coenzyme Q10 they put it in face creams and everything because they realize it's like a potential fountain of youth. Resveratrol. Now, resveratrol, RESVERATROL. Resveratrol, 50% of it in the methods they use is actually trans-resveratrol, and it's the active component that has anti-cancer properties. I myself take 50 milligrams a day of this with meals, and if I'm feeling stressed, and stress is a great killer, people, I'll take up to 500 milligrams that day of trans-resveratrol. They have you can find resveratrol on Amazon very, very inexpensively. You get 3 bottles at a time of what's called resveratrol platinum. I find that's because it could cost a lot of money, but resveratrol platinum is not that expensive. It's 50% trans-resveratrol. Then there's vitamin D3. you shouldn't take more than 5,000 units a day. Don't overdo it. It's like vitamin A. Any of your oil-based vitamins, you can build them up in your liver, and that's not so good. But you need it. It's great for many reasons, and of course, it's part of your calcium cycle, as you keep your calcium intact in your bones and so on. Although there's some theories where they disagree with that. But your vitamin D3 is important, and especially if you have cancer. Then you've got omega-3 fatty acids. A lot of people, especially if they're vegetarians, may be low on this, as well as arachidonic acid, and which comes from like beef, suet, and so on. We need a variety of these fatty acids and oils in our system. You've got omega-6. Hey, whenever you see a balance, omega-6, omega-3, omega-6 is so easy to obtain. Don't even worry about any content of that. Look for the omega-3. Get it from an animal source. If you get it from a vegetable source like linseed oil, it's not going to work as well, and it can even backfire on you. So get it from an animal source like a good, safe krill, like Dr. Mercola suggests, or you can use, if you're careful, try and get something that doesn't have mercury in it. See if you can find some nice fatty fish from the ocean. It's not the Pacific Ocean anymore, we can't do that anymore, can we? Try and find something that isn't radioactive and it doesn't have mercury in it that can give you omega-3. I suggest krill, Krill, as a source. At any rate, omega-3 fatty acids, they're absolutely essential to your health and well-being. And also, you have to worry about, and I hate to say the word worry, but please watch out about heavy metals, because that's another area where not just mercury, but we have a real problem with, of course, what radiation. Uranium is a heavy metal, but also we have cadmium, other dangerous heavy metals that have plagued certain areas of the United States, but also most of Scandinavia. So we have multiple sclerosis all over Scandinavia. There's a real link between that and trying to handle all the various heavy metals that you're going to be in contact with. So a lot of the high cancer rates and MS and Parkinson's and all that are in Scandinavian countries, I noticed that most of these are occurring right on top of deposits of heavy metals. They're cadmium, and of course you have iron and all the associated heavy metals that will come with iron mining. So you see these big strips of areas where, so something's happening, something's related there, and you need your omega-3 and you need your vitamin D3 to help, and to eat your cruciform like broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage to help pull some of that out of your system. Vitamin C, if you have cancer, I urge you to find a doctor who will let you have infusion of vitamin C through intravenous methods. In other words, actually pump it right into your body intravenously, and not just injecting it like into your stomach cavity or something like that, or in your peritoneum. Don't do it like that. Get it into your vein. Now, vitamin C is quickly eliminated by the body. It's just like the B vitamins. It's water soluble, and that means vitamin C is something you should be taking all the time. Don't take too much. Oh, if you have cancer, you're going to have to take a lot. But if you take too much vitamin C, say you're taking 5 grams a day, you can get cataracts from it. So, because your eye can't handle that much vitamin C and the acid from it. So, now here is a diet. It's an anti-cancer diet. I have on Facebook the Anti-Cancer Cookbook that can help you. to keep track of all these. You should eat 3 cups, and this sounds awful, but try it. About 3 cups of greens and all your lettuces and salad materials every day, and 3 cups of brightly colored fruits and vegetables every day. And you don't cook those vegetables, people. Just soften them if you want to, but don't cook them very much. And cook them slowly. Make sure that you're staying away from sugar and artificial sugar. Now, I know you love sugar. I love it too. Look, it's better to indulge and say, one day a week I'm going to have my cookie or whatever, than to eat it every day and feed cancer, because that's what it does. Sugar is a chemical. It's not a food. It is a chemical. It's an energy-providing chemical. You can get if dichloroacetic acid, that's DICHLORICACID, dichloroacetic acid. I'm not spelling very well with my double vision here. But don't be fooled. Don't take too much of it. If you're in Canada, for example, you may have a problem because you can buy it there and take too much, or you can have it sent to you, and it won't do you that much good. You need very tiny amounts of it, of dichloroacetic acid. You can find it in unfiltered, unpasteurized organic apple cider, or in a apple cider vinegar that still has the live mother of vinegar in the bottom. And that's where you can find it. Now, I hope that these will give you some ideas on what might help you to don't leave meat out of your diet. Just make sure the meat is not processed and doesn't have any nitrates in it. And stay away from nitrosamines that you can create by just simply grilling your meat. Any of that black, delicious stuff you see on there can give you stomach cancer. So stay away from it. Do not take soy and all that. Stomach cancer is one of the main problems that Japanese have, and they're using way too much soy. You can have fermented soy products, and you can have some soy, but don't overdo it. And the wok thing is going to give you a lot of the nitrosamines again. I hope that this will help you. Remember, stay away from the sugar. Get second opinions. I would avoid biopsies, and so that you won't have to have an autopsy. And please join me on Facebook. And I am not a doctor. You have to go and consult your doctor about your diets and everything. I'm not going to take the blame if you misunderstood something I said, or if I've left something out here. But I assure you that I've seen people get well. I had a melanoma on my arm, and I used inositol, and wet it down and put it on there with a bandage. After that, I used resveratrol in the same area. And finally, I used dihydroquinone, 3%. And that's a bleach cream that people use to fade age spots. Melanoma has to have melanin in order to multiply and grow. You take away that, and how can the melanoma cell then has no way to reproduce itself without the melanin. So when it's bleached out, I've tried this on my own arm. So ask your doctor first, and understand that they want to ban these bleach creams. And I wonder why sometimes.
I would also look into using cannabis oil, and changing your whole diet up and everything else. I have to cut us off, Judyth, because we have about 50 seconds left, and then we're going to cut off.
I knew I was cutting it close there, but I hope that this will help people, and I felt it was worth it.
I'm sure it will. Thank you first of all, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for having the courage, as always, to speak up, and thank you for taking the time to actually give some health tips. I like when you come on and we get a chance to talk about, more than just JFK
Conspiracy.
or conspiracy stuff or anything like that. I like when we actually get a chance to get into health stuff. So I'll say goodbye to you off air. So just stand by, ladies and gentlemen. As always, research. Buy Judith's book. Get the special limited edition while they're still available. I only have about a box and a half left. I love you all. I'll catch you all again tomorrow night. We're out.
Bye.